Welcome to another coding tutorial, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a basic data visualization using some simple data. If you're a long-time follower of this channel, you might know that I love to run, and you might be able to see from the different timelines that I have throughout the year. But last year in 2024, I actually ran a total of 119 times, and I log every single day that I did run, and we're going to be using that data to create some basic data visualization. So I have the data right here on Google Sheet, and as you can see, there are a total of 2 columns. One is called month and then one is called date, and there are a total of 119 columns, not including the header, and basically it's just the date and the month that I ran. So that's all I have. I'm going to download it into a CSV file. Once the file is downloaded, I'm going to upload the data onto the sketch, and all you need to do is come to this arrow here, click the plus sign, and then click upload file, and then you just drag and drop your file onto here. All right, and my file is called running log, and it is a CSV file. So how you upload the data is, first I'm going to create a variable called table, and then I'm going to use a function called preload to actually preloading this piece of data onto the sketch before we start running the program. And now I'm going to set table to another function called load table. And what you want to do is that you want to put in the name of your file onto here, and then in my case it is called runninglog.csv, and you want to put it in a quotation mark as well, or this one quotation mark. So runninglog.csv, and let's click run to make sure everything is good, and it is good. And before we move forward, let's look at the p5.table reference page real quick, just to see the different methods that we're going to be using. So I want to focus on a few today. The first one is get row count, and the second one is get column count. And this is basically going to return the total number of rows and columns in a table. And all you need to do is put in, as you can see here in the example, they also using the preload function to load the table, and then you can just do table.getRowCount to get the number of rows. All right, so let's do print table.getRowCount. Oh, I basically printed it out in preload, so I want to do it in setup. All right, so there are a total of 120 rows, but actually the first row is the header rows, right? The name of the columns. So if we want to tell the program that actually the first row is the header inside this load table function, you need to put in the third argument as the header. But to get to the third argument, you need to get to the second argument, and you're going to put in an argument to tell it what file type you're using, and we're using CSV. And then now in the third argument, you can put in header. All right, so now if we print, we get a total of 119. And so if we do column count, then we should get 2. Perfect. Now we want to actually know how to retrieve the data from the table, right? So let's look at another method. The method that I want to look at is actually called getNum, and let's see where it is. GetNum retrieves a float value from the table specified row and column, and how we're going to do this is by providing row and column in the form of the row is specified by its ID, which is the row number, and the column may be specified by either its ID or title, and we're going to use title, which is month and day. So let month equals to table.getNum. How about I put in 0, which is the first row after the header, and then the column name would be month, and then we're going to do the same thing for day, which is table.getNum 0, and then day. Actually, let's look at the data again. It actually is date, so I'm going to change here to date. All right, and now I'm going to print month and date. 1, 3. The first one is 1, 3. So let's try this one. It is in the 11th row, but it is actually based on this. The index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So we should get 1 and 25. So if we do 9 and then 9, we do get 1 and 25. Next, I'm going to create an array of objects called dates, and I'm going to add all of the days in 2024, which there were a total of 366 days actually, because in February there's a total of 29 days. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna start by creating an array called dates, and then I'm going to create another array called months, and it is going to have a total of 12 numbers, which are the number of days in each month. All right, and as I said earlier, February has 29 days. Then inside setup here, what I'm going to do is that why don't we comment this first, and then I'm going to write a for loop, a nested for loop actually. So for let I equals to 0, I less than months dot length, I plus plus, and then for let j equals to 0, j less than months of I, and then j plus plus. And I want to add the object inside this dates array, and what I can do is I can use a method inside an array class called push to push in a new pieces of information, right? And the information that I want to push in is actually the month and the date. So I'm going to put it inside this curly bracket. The first thing is going to be month, which is, so you put in month, colon, and then it's going to be I plus 1, right? Because this starts at 0. And then how about we say date, which is going to be j plus 1. And then we can just print dates and just see. All right, so there are a total of 366 objects, and inside each object it is basically month 1, date 1, month 2, date 1, and so on. And if you go all the way down, you should get 12 and 31. What I want to do next is that I'm going to create another array called runningDates, and these are going to have all of the index that correspond with this dates array that is going to be the dates at which I did go for a run. So how we're going to do that is that first we're going to create an array called runningDates, and then inside here we're going to write a for loop for row equals to 0, and then row less than table dot get row count, right? So we want to go through all of the number of rows, which are the total of 119, because that's the number of days I did run, and then row plus plus. And then after that, we're going to create two variables. It's called these running month, and this is going to be table dot get num of row, and then month, right? And then let running date be table dot get num row and then date. And basically if I print running month and running date right now, what you see is actually exactly what was in the table, right? But now we want to find the index inside the dates array that match with these pieces of data. So what we can do is that we can use a function in JavaScript called findIndex. So let's look at how that works. So the findIndex method of array instances returns the index of the first element in an array that satisfied the provided testing function. If no elements satisfy the testing function, -1 is returned. So I'm going to look at the example here. So as you can see, there is an array. In this case, it's called array1 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of data. But here is the conditional statement. So this is the testing function, right? So the syntax is a little bit different from what we're used to, but let's go through it. So element here is going to be us going through all of the elements inside the array. So all of this, 5, 12, 8, 130, and 44, and this is the test condition. So if element is greater than 13, then it returns true. And then if you see here, basically it goes through this array, and then it uses the function find index, and if it's true, then it returns the index. But if it's false, then it returns -1. So I'm actually going to copy and paste this and use it as a reference. All right, how about we put it inside here? All right, we don't need this. Did I run? And if element, which is all of the elements inside the dates array here, right, which are objects with month and day as the data, right? So if element, and then if element is what? If element dot month is equals to running month. So if whatever is in the dates array matches with the running month, which is us going through the table, and element dot date is equals to running date, then what we want to do is that, so we did this one, we want to match it. So dates dot find index, we want to find the index inside the dates array here, and then check did I run, and if actually we need to set this as index. If index is not equals to -1, right, which means it matches, then we want to push the index value inside the running dates array. So running dates dot push index. Okay, then we can delete this. So how about we print out running dates? So there are a total of 119 indices, right? Because there are a total of 119 pieces of data inside this array, and we basically get all of the index that corresponds with the dates array, which has 366 days. So that's what we're going to use to do the data visualization. The design of this visualization is actually inspired by this piece by the designer Hee Yoo-sun, and the piece is called the Ring of Time Topography Calendar. So I'm going to be doing the spiral look like the one that you see here, but we're going to not do it exactly the same as this one, but I'm going to actually be using a similar color palette as this one, as it looks really beautiful. First, we're going to figure out how to draw the Archimedean spiral, and we're going to do it using an equation r equals to a plus b times theta or times angle, where r is the radial distance and theta or angle is the angular coordinates, and a and b are constants. So a actually represents the constant radial offset from the pole. So if we look at the polar coordinates, it basically is where the starting point is going to be, and we're actually going to be using a as the middle point of the canvas, or width divided by 2 and height divided by 2, and then b actually controls the rate of change of r or radius with respect to the angle. And after we get the r and theta, we need to also convert from polar coordinates to Cartesian coordinates, and we're going to use our trusty equation x equals to r times cosine of angle, and then y equals to r times sine of angle. So let's implement that. We're going to start by, how about writing a for loop for let I equals to 0. I'm going to start with 100 points, I plus plus, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to start by, let's start with the x and y equation, r times cosine of angle, and then y equals to r times sine of angle, and then r is going to be equals to a plus b times angle, right? But a is actually going to be width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. I want it to be at the middle of the canvas, so I'm actually going to leave it at 0 for now. So we're just going to do b times angle, and the angle offset, I'm going to actually just use I here. So it's going to go from 0 to 99. And the reason that I left a out here is because I actually want to move or translate the origin point from the top left corner of the canvas here to the middle point here. So we're going to translate it to width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. And then how about we draw out the xy points using a function ellipse at x and y location, and let's just do a size of 10 by 10. Oh, and then we need to define what b is. How about we start with b equals to 1. All right, so we get a spiral. Now let's change b to 2. What does that do? It basically just increases the spacing of each of the points here, so you get a bigger spiral. But as you can see here, closer to the center, the radius is small. Even though the spacing is the same, you can see that it seems tighter at the beginning, and then it spaces out a lot more towards the corners or the borders of the sketch. I don't actually want it such that it seems tighter in the middle, but then spaced out towards the end. What I want to do is that I want it to actually spaced out evenly, and how I can adjust this is instead of doing I for angle, I can actually do square root of I, and this way we slow down the growth rate of I at the beginning. So let's click run. And as you can see here, it seems like it grows out evenly, but actually it's just the beginning that grows out more evenly. So if I put this as, let's say 500, yeah, you get this look, which is quite nice. But it seems a little bit too tight. So what I actually want to also do is, how about we multiply b to angle here as well. All right, and we actually can increase b to, how about 3? And then I don't actually want a hard-coded number of 500, but what we want is actually 366. So it's going to be dates.length. Perfect. Next, instead of drawing ellipses, we actually want to draw out the text. So I'm going to delete ellipse here and just put in text. And text can take in 3 arguments. The first one is the text that we're going to write, and we want to write the numbers inside the dates array, right? And we actually want to put in the dates. So it's going to be dates of I dot date, and then we're going to put it at x and y location. Perfect. What I want to do now is I want to adjust the size of the text a little bit. So we can do text size, and how about we put in size, and let's set size to 9. Okay, and right now the text or the numbers are all upright, right? I want to rotate it based on the angle here. And what I can do is I can put in a function called rotate, and we're going to rotate it by angle. Whoa! How we want the rotate function to work is that we want it to rotate around this x and y coordinate. And to do that, what we need to do is we need to actually translate to x and y coordinates first, and then do rotate, and then put in 0 and 0 here. But once we use these translate and rotate function, we also need to put in push and pop. And push basically saves all of these transformation, and then pop returns it back to the original, which is where the origin is at width divided by 2 and height divided by 2 before we do the translate and the rotate again. And if we do this, now it rotates in the manner that we want it to rotate. And the last thing that I want to fix is I actually want it to rotate from angle and then plus pi divided by 2 so that it gets a nice look, so we don't need to turn our head too much. All right, and then now what I want to do next is that I want to actually put in circles around the dates that I actually went for a run, and we're gonna do it before the text because I want the text to be on top. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a for loop to go through the running dates array. So I equals to 0, I less than running dates dot length, I plus plus, and then we're gonna create a variable called val, and then val is going to be the values inside running dates, right? So running dates of I, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same thing as this, because we're gonna draw the circles on this spiral shape, right? So let angles to be equals to square root of val. This one is gonna be square root of the value here, right? Because it's not gonna be on all of the indexes. This basically is the index of the dates that I went for a run. So val times b, and then r will be equals to b times angle, and then for x and y, same thing, equals to r times cosine of angle, and y equals to r times sine of angle. And then now we're gonna be drawing an ellipse at x and y location, and we're gonna do size and size. And then we're gonna fill it with the color based on the inspiration poster that I showed you earlier. So we're gonna have the color palette to be this one. It has a total of 6 colors. And then inside fill, I want to randomize the color that I'm gonna put on here, and we can do that by just put it in the random function and then the name of the array, color palette. Let's click run. Whoa. Okay, what I want to do is also, I don't want it to call the draw function over and over again. So we're gonna call it no loop. So it's only called once. All right, and then how about we do no stroke. And then for the text, we're going to put in the color black. All right, and as you can see here, it's not very centered. And what we can do is that we can center the text using the function text aligned, and we want to center it in the x and y coordinate. And it is centered. So I actually also want to increase the size of the ellipse to be size times a specific scale. So how about we create a variable called scale. Let's do a scl scale to be 1.3. All right. Now I also want to change the font. So I have actually downloaded the font, and all you need to do is once you have your font, come to this arrow here, click the plus sign, and then click upload file. And I'm actually going to upload 2 fonts, same font, but 2 styles. One is called outfit black and one is called outfit regular. So how we gonna be using the font is that first we also need to preload it, and we already have the preload function. So now all we need to do is we need to create 2 variables. The first one, I'm going to call it font R, and then the second one, we're gonna call it font B. And then inside here, we're gonna do font R to be equals to, the function is load font, and we're gonna tell it where it is. So it is gonna be called outfit dash regular dot ttf, and then font B is gonna be same thing, but this is gonna be black. All right, and the reason that I want to use 2 sets of fonts is because I want the number 1 for each of the month here to have a darker look. And what we can do is inside this array here, we can do a conditional statement that says if dates of I dot day is equals to 1, then set the font, no, it's called text font, to be font B, and then else let's set the font to be font R. Run. Is all equals, no, it's date. Ta-da! All right, and I also want to fix this one here. How about we say if the index is not equal to 0. So if it's not the first one, which is this number 1 right here, then we rotate. So this is not equal to, and then otherwise we would rotate. I want this first one to be right side up. All right, and now how about I want to increase the size of my sketch to 450. And then I'm going to change the background color here to be this nice color. All right, and then the last piece is I want to draw some sort of a border. This is me just playing around with how this looks now. So I'm going to draw 4 lines, but I'm going to first create a variable called border. Let's set it to 15. And then how about we draw a line from 0 to border, and then width to border. All right, and then let's set the stroke weight to be a little bit thinner at 0.5. And I'm gonna do the same thing. All right, so here's my take on a basic data visualization using very basic information. And I think this is kind of fun because you can just use any type of data. It doesn't have to be big sort of data, but you can experiment with how things look, experiment with colors, and get inspired by a lot of the different cool graphics out there that you can find on the internet. So I hope that you give this one a try, and if you have other interesting data that you want me to play around with, send them my way and give it a try.